everybody. What's good? This is D Moss, and you're watching 101 with D Moss with our guest, City Councilor Justin Hurst, two-time City Council President, and now he's running for mayor of the great city of Springfield. I'm your host. My name is D Moss. We're going to talk about some things. We're going to talk about why Justin's running. We're going to talk a little bit about his background and why he got into politics. We're going to talk about his vision and his vision for the great city of Springfield. So we're going to jump right into it. I just got a few things I want to say. Just talk about some of the critical challenges that are facing the city of Springfield that I've heard Justin talk about, but I haven't heard a lot of the other candidates talk about. And let me be very clear. This is not a biased conversation. Every candidate that I talk to, we ask the same questions. The responses are entirely of their own. I didn't call them ahead of time and say, I'm going to talk about ... and ... So we're going to get right into it. Some of the critical challenges: poverty and economic inequality, inequity. Springfield has a high poverty rate with nearly 25% of residents living below the federal poverty line. This poverty is concentrated in certain neighborhoods, and it contributes to a number of other challenges such as crime, poor health, lack of opportunity. Homelessness. Springfield has a large homeless population with an estimated 1,500 people experiencing homelessness on any given night. Crime. Springfield has a higher crime rate than the national average. This is due to a number of factors, including poverty, again, lack of opportunity, social disorganization, education. Springfield's public schools are struggling. The city has a high dropout rate, low test scores, hasn't changed over the last 12 to 15 years. This is due to a number of factors, including, again, poverty, lack of resources, and poor teacher retention. Infrastructure. Springfield's infrastructure is definitely in need of repair. We have some roads that are really good. If you live in certain neighborhoods in the city, your roads get paved 3 times a year. If you live in other neighborhoods, well, catch you when they catch you. So looking at the city's roads, water system, they are aging, need of investment. This can lead to problems such as traffic congestion in certain areas, and certain times of the day we have problems with traffic. Flooding in some areas, we all know how that is. I know driving down my street sometimes, I had to drive through the water. Public health. Springfield has a number of public health challenges, such as high rates of obesity, diabetes, heart disease. These challenges are often linked to, again, poverty, lack of access to healthy food, and a lack of physical activity. These are just some of the critical challenges that face the city of Springfield, and addressing these challenges will require a concentrated effort from city government, community organizations, and residents. So, Justin Hurst is running for mayor. You're going to inherit some stuff, some good. There's a whole lot that needs to be addressed. I'm not going to say bad, but definitely challenged. So, Justin, let's start by learning more about your background and what inspired you to run for the position of mayor. And can you share a little bit about your personal journey and the values that drive your vision for Springfield's future?
No doubt. Appreciate you, D. Morris, as always, bringing it real to the people of Springfield. Absolute pleasure to be here. First of all, for those that don't know me, I was born and raised in the city of Springfield. I graduated from Springfield Central High School. After graduation, went to attended the University of Virginia, where I received my Bachelor of Arts degree in English. And then, I always knew that I was going to come back home to the city of Springfield. For the bulk of my life, I watched my parents give back to marginalized communities here in the city of Springfield and be a voice and an advocate for the voiceless. So I knew early on that I was coming back home to emulate a lot of what it was that I saw when I was growing up. And that's exactly what I did. Upon graduation, I came back to the city of Springfield. I taught high school English at an alternative school, actually MLK Academy at that time. A lot of people didn't know it existed, but D. Moss, you had a integral role at MLK under the late Dora Robinson. So I was there teaching full time, and I also went to Western New England University School of Law at night. In 2004, graduated from Winnick University, and then in 2005 passed the bar. And in 2011, I wanted to impact more individuals than just those in my classroom. So I ran for city council. Unfortunately, I was unsuccessful. Out of the top 5 at-large candidates, I finished in 6th. But like many instances in my life, I was undeterred. Ended up running again in 2013, was ultimately successful. A lot of people give the credit for that win to my wife, who was also on the ticket and is a school committee person here in the city of Springfield. And so So ended up getting on the city council. I've served the last 10 years on the Springfield City Council in 2019 and in 2020. Like you mentioned earlier, I was president of the Springfield City Council. And to be honest with you, I probably have been one of the most vocal counselors, on the city council for a long time. And I've never been afraid to speak truth to power and courageously tackle some of the most difficult issues here in the city of Springfield. And so you said, what drives me? There's a level of desire and determination to see Springfield achieve its full potential. From a young age, I was always taught to work hard. My grandfather dug ditches for a living, and my father dug ditches to pay his way through Howard University. And so, that mentality of continuing to give everything, all I have, continuing to work hard, making sure that I give back was instilled in me at a young age. And to be honest with you, that's what's playing out now. It's one of the reasons why I'm running for mayor of Springfield. I know that I can be a voice for those individuals that have not been represented and often find themselves on the outside looking in.
Okay. What are the key values and principles?
So, for me, it's having a good work ethic. When I was just talking to my son, and I was like, the difference between those individuals who are great versus those individuals who are average is, a difference of about 5%. And so the question is, how do you get to be the best at what it is that you're doing? And so, the question is always, how do you compare amongst that 5%? How do you recognize that, you're either behind or you're somewhere in the middle or you're at the top, and you never want to lose any ground? And so unless you're giving everything that you possibly have on every day and every hour to make sure that, folks that you're moving the needle, you're going to find yourself steadily behind and steadily trying to catch up. And so the one thing that, has always stuck with me is, you gotta give everything that you do, everything that you have. And, I pride myself on that. Also pride myself on, being able to get back up when you're knocked down. Oftentimes when, you're speaking out on difficult issues, you put yourself in the limelight, and you're oftentimes susceptible to a lot of criticism, whether people, like where you're coming from, agree with you or disagree with you. You oftentimes find yourself in the spotlight. And so every time you're knocked back down, you gotta just get back up and put one foot after another and make sure you're taking advantage of that window of opportunity, which only opens but so often. And so between that and, having that drive and having that determination to, just keep moving the needle and realizing that, we do this. It's not about us. We do all of the things that we're doing in life to make it better for those that are coming after us. And we need to recognize that, those many individuals that have paved the way for us to get to where we're at, we need to do the same for those that are coming after us. And, oftentimes I don't think a lot of people understand that and appreciate that enough.
Okay. I appreciate your responses. Thank you. In your opinion, what are the top 3 challenges that Springfield currently faces, and how do you plan to address them if elected?
Top 3 challenges. Number one, we've got to address crime here in the city of Springfield. And, we have, this has been one of the deadliest years as it relates to homicides here in the city of Springfield. There's, certainly the gun violence is through the roof, and it's a difficult issue to tackle. And really, from my perspective, it's the direct result of 16 years of a lack of investment in our communities and in our young people. And so, for me as mayor, how would I plan to address it? I'd have a plan. Early on, I called for the mayor to put forward a plan, and I've yet to see a comprehensive plan that involves the community. I've seen a lot of press conferences, and I've seen a lot of meetings, but I still have yet to see a comprehensive plan that at this point in time, after 16 years, ought to just, require some tweaking. So from my standpoint, there needs to be a significant investment in our police department. We're currently down 70 police officers. And, it was interesting because, I'm not asking for neighborhoods to be over policed. And, when I put out having a full complement of police officers, what I'm referring to is that we need to get back to that minimum number. And right now we're short 70 police officers. And one might think, well, maybe we don't need them. But when we start talking about the number of unsolved homicides that we have here in the city of Springfield, if we had a full complement of police officers, we might be able to reinvest those resources into solving those homicides, which would in turn make folks think twice if they're being prosecuted for these homicides. And it'll make them think twice as to whether they want to commit those homicides, because they know resources are being invested in actually finding those who are the perpetrators. So that is one component. On top of that, we need to make sure that we have individuals on every state and federal task force from the police department addressing gang, guns, and drugs here in the city of Springfield. Right now, that is not happening, and personality shouldn't get in the way of public safety. In addition to that, we need to make sure that we have flex schedules for our specialized units. Right now, we don't have any specialized units working past 12 midnight, and we also don't have any specialized units working on the weekends. And then we need a community component, and that community component needs to make sure that we're investing the resources into those individuals that are on the ground doing the work. Those individuals who are able to produce results. We need to make sure that we're assessing whether these organizations that we're investing in are actually getting results. And if they're getting results, we need to make sure that they're funded to the level that they need to be funded. And that includes those that are addressing our returning citizens who, I know oftentimes folks want to say lock them up and throw away the key, but the reality is these same individuals are coming back on our streets. And we need to make sure that, they have the vocational skills, the training, job training to be successful. We need to make sure we're investing in mental health. We need to make sure that we're investing in our young people to address the violence that is going on here in the city of Springfield, as well as education, among other things. And then finally, we need to make sure that we're addressing the perpetrators themselves. And if you don't have a relationship with those individuals that are involved in the gangs and are sanctioning the violence, then we need to make sure that we speak to somebody who does have a relationship, so we can get to the bottom line as to why folks are doing the senseless killing that they're doing at this point in time. So that's a big issue. And, without going into, too much detail, I would say the other significant issue is education. We need to deal with education. If we, that is one of the root causes, and we know that the school to prison pipeline is real, and it's something that is important. And then finally, I would say the third issue is to just have an honest and transparent government. We talk about why so many individuals don't want to get involved in government, don't have any faith in government, aren't necessarily turning out to vote in government. Well, if you're constantly telling folks that you're going to do something and then you don't do it, why would folks, one, believe you, and two, be interested in what it is that you're going to do next? If you're constantly depriving communities who need the resources the most, those resources, then why would you in turn, I apologize, is that me?
Yeah.
Is that ringing on my end? Give me one second. That might be my son's alarm clock. Hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that, D. And we need to make sure, that folks actually have faith in their government. And if they don't have faith in their government, they are not going to get involved. And if they're not going to get involved, they won't see themselves as part of the solution, which is absolutely critical. So that would be number 3, honesty and transparency in government.
I'm glad you ended number 3 with community engagement, because that's my next question.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on how you plan to engage and involve the residents in the decision-making process for the betterment of Springfield?
You have to want to, at the very least. I mean, we have a number of boards and commissions that go unfilled. And, if you want people to actually get involved in government, you have to make sure that they see themselves as having a role in the government that is impacting them. And one way in which they can get involved is to serve on a board or commission. And there are so many of them that have gone vacant for a number of years. On top of that, we need to make sure that we're that we're relating to the individuals in the many communities that we're impacting, and how, if they don't know how the issues are impacting them, then they're likely not going to get involved. So there needs to be a level of education and communication with those individuals. And it can't just be through, your traditional media outlets, right? We have other options. And so when you start thinking about, even when we were talking about ARPA funding, right? Like, that's something that folks could really engage with government on, could have been
Right.
part of the process, could have been more aware, but we didn't utilize the avenues to communicate with our constituents that we ought to have used. I mean, when you look at the city of Springfield social media presence, if you want to, make or get young people engaged, you got to be a bit innovative, and it's not even innovative right now. Just take advantage of what is there, and maybe you hire a few more young people to help you with that process if there's a void, which there clearly is. On top of that, we need to get a bit more culturally competent and recognize that the city of Springfield is majority minority. So if you're constantly going through the Republican that spread information, then that may not be getting to folks. And so you've got the Metro Record, you've got Point of View, you've got La Voz, radio in the Hispanic community, among others. And so we need to make sure that we're certainly making folks aware of the issues. And then, I spoke to it before. When you start talking about honesty and transparency in government, the only way you're going to engage people and keep them involved is if they believe that you're going to do what it is that you're telling them that you're going to do. The more you don't do that, the more disinterested they get and disenchanted they are with government. I mean, we can go back as far as the promise to eliminate the trash fee. That didn't happen. So now the question is, what's next? I mean, you've got thousands of people who are waiting on $1,400 direct cash payments that were promised to them through ARPA, and yet nobody has seen those. And it, for many folks, it's been well over a year. And so until we start to meet our residents where they are at and go to them and make sure that they're involved in the process, we're not going to engage the people that we need to engage. We're going to continue to let the system work exactly how it's working, and it's only benefit those individuals who are part of the system, which right now is a very small group of people.
Right. You mentioned the boards and commissions. A lot of people complain that the process that's currently being used, and even the process being used by its predecessors, is completely antiquated. You don't get on a board or a commission unless, of course, you're part of his campaign team and he's somebody you can trust to vote or make decisions that would benefit you and the segment of the population that you trust or that you relate to. How would you go about bringing on new members to boards and commissions?
How about get a group from the community involved in the actual process of screening candidates? When you look at the police commission as it was formed, that is probably the best example, and an example that is representative of how boards and commissions are filled throughout the city of Springfield. What happened was the mayor, I don't even know if he asked for the police commission folks to submit a resume when they first appointed the police commissioners. If he did, that was all that he asked for, and he knew exactly who he wanted to apply, and those individuals who applied were hand selected by the mayor. Anytime you have individuals who are hand selected by the mayor, it's going to give the appearance that the system has been rigged. And unfortunately, that happens far too often. And if you don't get individuals from a cross section of the community at the table scrutinizing and vetting the applications, then you're going to get the same old players to apply, and the same old players are going to be selected. And again, the community is not going to be engaged. They're not going to trust government, and that is part of the problem. And so you definitely have to incorporate more individuals who the community respects and trusts at the table, making sure that they're scrutinizing those applications. And then we have to make sure that the process is fair and transparent and gets out to the entire community. And we just spoke about some of the mediums that we need to use, but you're not going to get a diverse pool of individuals who want to serve in these boards and commissions unless you get that information out to a variety to a variety of communities through a variety of different modes of communication.
Right. Okay. Appreciate that response. Because I know a lot of people have questions and concerns about that. It's like that process seems to be like for that upper echelon in the city of Springfield. And if you just regular Joe Johnson live around the corner, your hopes of serving on a board or commission is slim to none. So that's always been a concern.
For sure, for sure. That ought to be an easy fix, though, D. I mean
I agree.
that's not a hard one, and the fact that we have boards and commissions that are unfilled just means to me that we do not want individuals to serve on these boards and commissions.
Okay. And I had to ask, and I had a couple of people say, well, when you talk to them, can you ask their question? Questions asked, and when they watch it, they get the answer.
Absolutely.
Now, you talked about community engagement. I'm going to stay on that for a second. You talked about all the different neighborhoods. We know Springfield has 17 beautiful and diverse neighborhoods, all with its own type of cultural environment. Indian Orchard is about as different from Pine Point as Pine Point is from the North End. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like with all these diverse neighborhoods, how do you intend to ensure that all those communities benefit equally from the city's development initiatives? Typically, when it comes down to infrastructure, when I was working with the mayor, we received more calls about roadways and trash pickup in Indian Orchard than we did in Mason Square. So it's like, how do we make sure that all these neighborhoods feel important? A lot of times the conversations revolve around Ward 7, Ward 2, Ward 4, and everybody else just kind of exists. And you know what I mean? You work with the problem child or the noisy rich kid, and everybody else is done. How do you plan to take your administration, take all these department heads, and actually get them out and integrate them into the communities that they're doing effective work?
Exactly what you said. They need to get out of the office. Far too often, are we top heavy? And not only are we top heavy, but we have a lot of administrators that are cooped up in an office. And what we need to do is we need to make sure that those, from an economic development standpoint to an HR standpoint, we need to make sure that we are in all of the neighborhoods here in the city of Springfield, and we're listening to the concerns of all of the residents in the city of Springfield. Now, whether that's going to your neighborhood, civic associations, or whether that's attending going to a church service in a particular neighborhood just to seek residents out, whether it's going to a baseball game in a particular, at a particular park in a particular neighborhood.
Right.
I mean, you got to find the people where they're at and make sure that you're understanding what their issues are and what their concerns are. And it can't just be a select group of people. Oftentimes, neighborhood organizations and civic associations, there are only so many people that attend those meetings in certain areas. And so what oftentimes happens is you have a few people operating on behalf of the masses in that particular community. And so just because they're the ones that are in attendance and present and are in the know, they tend to speak for the entire community. And that can't happen. But that also requires effort. And one of the things that I feel like this administration has fallen short on is the really effort to be inclusive. And so my administration will definitely be inclusive and be talking to those individuals who oftentimes don't get their voices heard. And then we'll also work with data. The data is we know how many streets we paved in Ward 7 because the data ought to tell us, right? We know when the last time we've repaved the sidewalk in Indian Orchard or Mason Square, because the data will tell us. And so we need to be data driven. But in order to be data driven, we need to make sure we have a full complement of people in City Hall. And right now, when you have 149 vacancies, that makes it extremely difficult for you to be able to provide citizens with the services that they need.
Okay. Thank you for that response. Let's move to education. We know that education is the cornerstone of any thriving community. The question is, how do you plan to enhance educational opportunities and support the city's young people.
No, absolutely. We need to be honest with ourselves as to where we're at. What we tend to do is we tend to sell folks on graduation rates and dropout rates as though that's the bar for success. And, those who are in the education field know that those numbers can always be manipulated. And on top of that, it's an extremely low bar. What we need to be thinking about is how do we compare to other schools in the state and other districts in the state? People go to a city and want to live in a city where folks are doing well as it compares to other towns and cities in the
Yeah.
state. And so when you look at Springfield, we're not fair in comparison to other surrounding towns throughout the state of Mass. We're not doing well. And you look at our four high schools, major high schools, that is, those four major high schools are in the bottom 10% as it relates to schools in the Commonwealth. And so we have to do better. And the last time I looked, we only had one school that was in like the top 65th percentile or in the top 65%. And that, that's dismal. And so we have to do better. We have to be honest with ourselves as to where we're at. On top of that, we need to make sure that we are paying our educators, paying our paraprofessionals, paying our custodians, paying our guidance counselors. The idea that every 3 years, they're fighting over, a contract, it kills the morale as it relates to education. And I remember back when I was an educator, the last thing that you wanted to have happen was folks fighting over a contract, especially when you look at the superintendent that over the course of the last few years has lost 9 of his schools from being under his purview and receives a 5% bump. And is currently making, close to $250,000 a year. And so,
With some of our best and brightest teachers working second and sometimes third jobs.
Absolutely. And when you look at our paraprofessionals, I mean, that they're not even making a living wage. And so the fact that they're fighting over a few dollars here and there, and you could probably make more working at a McDonald's than you can as a paraprofessional, and they're impacting our young people in such a significant way, is problematic and something that we have to rectify. In terms of retaining our administrators, that's huge. When I think of the administrators, and more importantly, when I look at administrators in general, but even to the point of administrators of color, which they are far and few in between here in the city of Springfield, we do a poor job in terms of retaining our administrators of color. And I go as far back as Principal Swan, Principal McCaskill, and there was just one that was recently that recently left the district who worked at Renaissance. And so the reason why they're leaving is because they don't see themselves in this system as being able to move upward. And so if we're not going to value those administrators who are on the ground doing the work and producing results, then another district will, and they will leave, and that ultimately will impact education for our young people. And then there's 33% of our of individuals who are not receiving any early education. 33% of our young people. And so what is happening now, and we rave about the increased percentages in the school district of pre-K classes and early education classes, but what we don't talk about is where those kids are coming from. And so what ends up happening is we take the kids from the Boys and Girls Club, we take the kids from the Head Starts of the world, we take the kids from the Square Ones of the world, as opposed to really doing the work to identify what kids are not getting anything at all. And I know folks are concerned about the money, which is a problem in and of itself. But if you're concerned about the money and you want that per pupil allocation, let's not bankrupt those individuals and providers who have been doing the work by taking their kids from them. Let's go and identify the 33% that are not receiving anything, and you can still get the money for those individuals from from the school or from the state. So
So are we
right.
saying,
Go ahead.
are we saying that a school department like the city of Springfield, which receives, I think we're only second to Boston in terms of the budget, correct?
Yes.
Are you saying that we're competing with some of the smaller agencies that are working with young people and really working hard to market their pre-K programs and Head Start programs to get kids in? 'Cause that's
Not,
what I'm hearing.
not only are we competing with them, but we're also taking their educators from them. And there's not a lot of communication between those early education providers and the impact that the school district is having on them. Everybody seems to be going along as though nothing is happening, and the reality is, in the next few years, those institutions who rely on that funding, who can no longer access that funding. They rely on it to survive and can no longer access it. You'll see those individuals closing down. I look at the YMCA's of the world who, they rely fairly heavily on their early education system. And there are others who do the same. And, my frustration is, and we also don't know that there has been no assessment tool to say that what the district is offering is better from a curriculum standpoint. And so, since there's not been any level of assessment or any tracking mechanism to identify whether those kids are performing at a higher rate, I'm not 100% sure that we even want the district getting in the realm of early education. And when you start to compare, when you actually are comparing the numbers from a school standpoint, I think we have to ask the tough questions as to whether we ought to let those early education providers who have been providing that level of education for a while continue to do their job. And, maybe they're better suited, but without the data, we'll never know. And so we certainly need to get that data. We need to focus on that 33% who is currently not being served. So those are just a few. D. I know you've got some other
I
questions.
do, I do, I do, I
Being in the
do.
education field, I could go on forever because that's where we
But
need to
but
start.
but as we talk about, I mean, a lot of folks have been focused. Some of the other candidates I talked to, city council and all, they're talking about the crime. But you can't really discuss crime if you're not going to talk about the education of our young people. You
No
can't
doubt.
talk crime if you're not going to talk about economic development and your vision for a prosperous Springfield.
No
If you're
doubt.
not going to have those conversations, then you can talk about boots on the ground all day long. But what are
Thank
you doing to create preventative and intervention efforts?
you.
That's what schools provide. It
Well,
gives young people a safe place to go to, but also a place where they can exercise their intellectual capacity. So I have no problems with you going on and on about the educational system because that's the end all to be all. So the last thought on school:
yes.
how do you integrate family and make families a part of the school system? During my tenure with the city of Springfield, we had phone calls received from the community. I mean, the vast majority of them were about parents who weren't allowed to exercise their thoughts while they're in meetings with school officials and school representatives. Some of them who weren't even invited to meetings, some of them who were never contacted until their kids are on the verge of being thrown out of school, dropping out of school, or not graduating. So, how do we get families? We talk about community engagement. How do we get families to the point where they're just as critical at that table as everybody else?
We need to make sure we have thorough administrators. We need to make sure that we have thorough educators who want to engage our families. We need to make sure that we create a culture that is inviting for those families to want to come to the school, to feel safe coming to the school, to feel safe being honest, and are able to build a relationship and rapport with someone in that particular school. We need to make sure we're seeing them and not looking past them or looking over them and not treating them as though they're the problem. We need to be open and realizing that many of our parents are killing themselves just to try to put food on the table. And so when it comes to maybe their child acting out, we need to realize that they are doing oftentimes the best that they can. And really, when they come to the district, they're coming asking for help. What
Right.
more can I do? What more resources are there out there for them? And I know it's not easy because we ask our schools to do everything, but we also need to provide them with the resources to be able to do it. And we need
Right.
to make sure that they know what's available to our parents and make sure that our parents know how to take advantage of those resources. And if there are any barriers, whether they are language barriers, cultural barriers, we need to be able to recognize and acknowledge those, and make sure that we're getting past those so that we can get to those that matter the most, which are our young people. And we can't have a successful district without the parents being actively involved, and they need to know early on. I don't want to know, we can't tell our parents that Johnny is failing at the end of the semester. Right? They need to know that Johnny has been acting out early on. Johnny hasn't, doesn't have a good grasp of the subject early, as opposed to waiting until it's too late, as opposed to waiting
Right.
until Johnny gets into that fight, or waiting until Johnny is no longer coming to school. And we need to track our young people from the standpoint of making sure that those that are not on the trajectory that we want them on, that we identify what the problem is early and make sure that we're monitoring their success moving forward. And when I say their success, I don't just mean educational success. I mean their life success, right? Because oftentimes, when they come to school, it's not that they can't grasp it. It's that they're worried about getting to school and all of the
Right.
things that they have to
Right.
do getting to school, right? And the fact that they haven't eaten before they get to school, and the fact that they gotta cross a particular block, and meet, the individual that they just had a fight with the other week before they get to school, right?
Yeah.
They're dealing with a lot. So anyhow,
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, D.
It's listen, man. When people watch this, I just hope that they can get a gist for who you are. People, everybody they know the name Hurst, but they don't know Justin Hurst. So it's like for me, it's like my interview style is a little different. I'd rather you do the talking instead of me trying to, show off my intellect by asking you a million questions. We
For
need to hear from
sure.
you. I'm not running for anything. So if you go off on a tangent, I'm gonna let you talk because I think people need to understand the thoughtfulness that goes into this process. So that's cool with me.
I,
Um, so let's talk a little about Springfield's faced economic challenges in the past. How do you intend to attract new businesses and investments to stimulate economic growth and create job opportunities?
we I said it the other day. I gave an analogy. It was a fisherman's analogy, and probably not the best one. But we're always looking for the big fish, and we're always looking to reel in the big catch. And what happens when we do that is that we miss all of the little fish that are in that are in the ocean that we could have been feeding and supporting and sustaining for a long time so that they can become that big fish, and that catch won't be as difficult, and there'll certainly be more out there. So let me break it down for you in more layman's terms. The small businesses here in the city of Springfield are the heartbeat of economic development. And so what we tend to do is say, hey, how can I get another Mass Mutual of the world here? How can I get another Bay State of the world here? As opposed to saying, how can we grow our small businesses to become medium-sized businesses to ultimately become large businesses? We know that our small businesses employ the most the most individuals in the city of Springfield. We also know that those same individuals that they employ are likely from the city of Springfield and ultimately are going to reinvest their dollars in the city of Springfield. They're also much more likely to hire our returning citizens, right? While I am a firm believer that our municipal government ought to be leading in hiring our returning citizens, the reality is those small businesses and even entrepreneurship opportunities are much more likely to hire our returning citizens who are coming home from prison. So all of that means that, okay, how do we support these small businesses? How do we get them to become medium-sized businesses and large businesses? Well, the one thing we can do that I've been a huge proponent of is make sure that we're steering municipal contracts to those small businesses so that they can in turn be more sustainable and grow. On top of that, we need to make sure that we're buying our goods and supplies from those small businesses. And let me remind you, the bulk of the small businesses here in the city of Springfield are likely small businesses of color, from our communities. And so, if we buy the goods and supplies from these individuals, they ultimately will be much more sustainable and be able to hire more individuals and certainly grow larger. And then the last thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that we're building relationships with these individual businesses so that we can, when it's time for them to grow, we can make sure that we give them the technical assistance that they need. They will feel comfortable giving us, sort of the insights as to what is going on in the inner workings of their business, which we learned from COVID. They're not that apt to do if they don't know you. And then ultimately prepare them to have access to capital so that they can ultimately grow.
Okay. Let's see. We're gonna move it. I'm not gonna keep you all day. Let's see. I have some bunch of questions. I'm like, which one do I ask? I'm gonna pick
That's
three
all
of them.
right. With it, whatever you got, I'm loving it.
Infrastructural improvements can greatly impact the city's livability. What are your priorities for upgrading Springfield's infrastructure, and how do you plan to fund these projects if you become mayor?
Well, first of all, let me tell you what I'm going to do on day one. And when we start
Okay.
talking about how to fund these projects, on day one, I'm going to audit every department in the city of Springfield, or certainly during the first 30 days, and make sure it's an independent third party auditor who does the auditing. And I'm going to identify all of the money that is being fraudulently spent and misused here in the city of Springfield, and then reinvest that money back into the neighborhoods, which includes infrastructure. The idea that there's a 20-year wait for sidewalks doesn't make any sense to me. The idea that taxes have gone up 8 out of the last 8 straight years and are getting ready to go up 9 out of the last 9 straight years. And we have a $40 million settlement from Eversource, and none of that money is going towards taxes, or very little is a problem. So we have to do better, and we'll certainly get some of the money from there. The other thing is that we need to be more efficient in terms of our services. When you have 149 vacancies here in the city of Springfield, we need to be more innovative in terms of how we're getting people to backfill for those positions of individuals who are retiring, and just for those positions that are vacant. We need to get a bit creative. I mean, if COVID taught us anything, it ought to have taught us that we should be able to do things like hybrid work. We should be able to do things like flex folks schedules, or maybe have 4-day works weeks. And I know it's hard. It's hard to get out of what folks have been doing time and time again for the last 16 years. I understand it's difficult, which is why sometimes you need change. And in this particular instance, I believe in order to improve our infrastructure, we need change. We need to make sure that we have, all of our vacant positions filled, and we need someone who is going to focus on spending the money the right way, which is investing in our neighborhoods as well as infrastructure.
Okay. Here's one I think you might be interested in. How do you envision Springfield's future in terms of accessible public transportation and affordable housing options?
you know, I it's interesting because on the city council, and once I saw that we were getting $123.9 million in COVID funding, and I saw what other communities were doing, the Worcesters of the world, the Bostons of the world. The first thing that came to my mind was affordable transportation. And when I started doing the research and realized that, one, other cities similar size in the city of Springfield were investing in affordable transportation, I said to myself, why not Springfield? We know that individuals are spending a third of their income on transportation. And, for me, that just didn't make sense. We did put together a plan for transportation to be more affordable that costs roughly, I believe it was like $4 million over the course of 2 years. It was a drop in the bucket as it relates to the $124 million that we received, but it would have long lasting effects on our residents in terms of allowing them to have more money in their pocket to invest in other things like fresh food. It also would allow them to get to the places where, especially those that live in food deserts, where they could find fresh food and certainly find food where, places weren't price gouging them on a regular basis. So affordable transportation is critical. It's something that we need. In terms of housing, it's no different. Folks are spending a significant portion of their money on housing. Rents are increasing dramatically. The price of homes in the city of Springfield is increasing dramatically. But we need to do the things that we have that we can do that we have under our control. And so one of the things that I would propose doing is making sure that we have a building commissioner who is from the city of Springfield. Right now, our building commissioner lives in Ludlow. And when you're able to come into the city, work, and then take your money outside of the city and not have to look at the folks that are struggling day in and day out, pass them on your way to the grocery store, pass them on your way to the barbershop, it's so much easier for you not to act with a sense of urgency. And right now, that is not happening. When you look at our building department, it is incompetent, and that might be an understatement. So we need to make sure that that it's not taking forever for individuals to developers and those who are rehabbing the existing housing that we have here in the city of Springfield are not waiting months to get permits and inspections. We know there are a number of condemned units, and if we would have gotten to those units before they were condemned and held these big time landlords accountable, we would have more of a housing stock here in the city of Springfield that folks could take advantage of. In addition to that, code enforcement. I mean, the idea that we don't, have a full complement of code enforcement officers here in the city of Springfield to immediately hold these big time landlords accountable doesn't make sense to me. And if you remember during the housing crisis, we were quick to take homeowners and banks to court through receivership. And yet we're hesitant and reluctant to do it for the Springfield Gardens of the world. Why did it get to this point? Why does it take so long? Why do you have a building where only two of the 50 units in it on State Street are occupied? I don't understand. They should have been in receivership a long time ago. And, part of the problem is that, we don't have enough attorneys. And we just have failed the residents here in the city of Springfield. And we have to do better as it relates to housing. And we need to make sure all of the existing housing stock is inhabitable or is habitable. I'm sorry.
How would you address receivership? And you look at the demographics that probably targeted the most across the city. Same with tax title challenges. We have a number of elderly who, during my 12 years, on a regular basis, they were coming in trying to figure out how to keep their properties because the taxes are too high, and they were dealing with a tax title crisis. In
Yeah.
other words, they're on the verge of losing their home, the tax title foreclosure. And I know a lot of candidates, even existing politicians, no one ever addresses tax title foreclosure
Yeah.
and how that hurts just the culture of the neighborhoods that we live in. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I don't know how you could put someone who is on a fixed income, knowing that we've raised property taxes 8 out of the last 8 straight years, and getting ready to raise them 9 out of the last 9 straight years, and we had the ability to, at the very least, level taxes out or lower them. How we could in turn take a senior's house through tax title foreclosure. I don't know how you could live with yourself. And you know, and you certainly ought not be able to live with yourself if you have not provided that individual or those individuals with all of the resources possible, so that they could stay in their homes. And that brings me back to the earlier point that I was saying. If we're going to do it for our seniors who can't afford to stay in their houses, because they can't afford the taxes, and we're not going to do it for these big time developers, then we just have the wrong outlook. And it's not an outlook that is beneficial to the residents. It's an outlook that is beneficial to big time developers. And so, you know, I couldn't stomach it then, and certainly can't stomach it now. And you know, again, we need to do it. We need to do what we can do that is in our hands. And certainly, we had $40 million, still have $40 million in Eversource funding to reduce taxes. We also, you know, have a trash fee that has been promised, you know, to be eliminated for the last 16 years. And we haven't done that. So we need to get the residents relief in some way, shape, or form. And this ARPA money really was a prime opportunity for us to do it, and we have failed.
Okay. All right. Justin, that wraps up our conversation. I had to ask those questions. Um, I'm getting text. People are saying, you know, I have a few people who are watching on a private link, and they're asking, you know, why aren't you going at them and challenging on the responses? I'm like, well, you only challenge what you disagree with. You know what to tell you. So wrap up the conversation. Please share a closing statement with our viewers and let them know how they can get involved with your campaign.
Yes. Yeah, hold on. Pause it real quick, D. Before it was live.
Yeah, if you can just provide our viewers with a closing statement and let them know how they can get involved with your campaign.
Absolutely. So, you know, we need a mayor who is going to work on behalf of all of the residents of Springfield. And so I would encourage those who are watching this show to vote for me on September 12th. If you want a mayor that is going to ensure that our young people receive a first class education, then you should pull the lever for Hurst. If you want a mayor who is going to make sure that we have a police commission who is empowered and is able to act free and independently from political interference, then you should pull the lever for Hurst. If you want a mayor who's going to make sure that municipal contracts go to local businesses here in the city of Springfield, if you want to make sure that residency laws are enforced so that millions of dollars are not taken outside of the city of Springfield yearly, then you should pull the lever for Hurst. If you want a mayor who is going to have a comprehensive plan to address gun violence here in the city of Springfield, who is going to invest in our youth through many avenues, and certainly not just going to talk about a sports complex, but actually build a sports complex here in the city of Springfield for our young people, then you should pull the lever for Hurst. If you want a mayor who's going to lead in employing our returning citizens and making sure that they have the vocational skills and job skills so that they can be employable, then you should pull the lever for Hurst. If you want a city that you can be proud of, that is, you know, that has clean parks, that has terraces that are groomed, that has streets that are free from litter, then you should pull the lever for Hurst. If you are tired of your taxes going up year after year, and want to see the trash fee eliminated, then you should pull the lever for Hurst. I am going to make sure that we have a city that works on behalf of all the residents and not just a select few. And so if you want that type of leadership, then I implore you to vote for Justin Hurst for Mayor of Springfield on September 12th. You can reach me at 413-374-5844. You can reach me at Hurst, the number 4 mayor at gmail.com, or you can go to our website at Hurst, the number 4mayor.com, or you can reach me through all of our social media handles at Hurst, the number 4 mayor. With that said, please get out and vote. At the end of the day, D. Moss, we're not going to see change here in the city of Springfield if folks don't exercise their right to vote. And if you're content with the same old the status quo, then you won't get out to vote. But I'm confident that people want change, and so please, early voting starts on Wednesday, August 30th, and goes through, I believe, September 9th. So we want to make sure each and every person comes out to vote and votes for the candidates that they believe are going to represent their best interests.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Justin Hurst, City Councilor Justin Hurst, candidate for mayor in the great city of Springfield, Massachusetts. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your insights and your vision for Springfield. To our viewers, please remember that your participation matters. Everything he said is spot on. Your participation matters. You cannot complain on Monday and then not vote on Tuesday. So I strongly advise you to stay informed, engage with all the candidates, become as educated as you can on the issues and challenges. And please remember that voting is not the end all to be all. Voting is the first step. Once you vote for someone, you make sure you stay involved in the process. You hold them accountable to ensure that your voice is being heard and that you're a part of the thought process downtown Springfield. So please get involved, stay involved, exercise your right to vote, and please be sure to join me for more engaging conversations. We have a few more interviews coming up this week. You'll probably see this broadcast about 5 or 6 times before the primary. Get to know your candidate. Other folks are interviewing select folks and they're giving you sound bites. I want to make sure I give you the whole spiel. So with that being said, Justin, thank you so much. Appreciate your time, man.
Listen, appreciate you, D. Morris. Have a blessed day and keep grinding on behalf of the Springfield community. We need you.
Will do. Thank you, sir.
All right.
All right, everybody. We out.